Who wants to be the next Italian wine ambassador? Join an exclusive network of 400 Italian wine ambassadors across 48 countries. Vinitaly International Academy is coming to Chicago on October 19th to 21st, and to Almaty, Kazakhstan from November 16th to 18th. Don't miss out. Register now at vinitaly.com.
Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as we journey to some of Italy's most beautiful places in the company of those who know them best, the families who grow grapes and make fabulous wines. Through their stories, we will learn not just about their wines, but also about their ways of life, the local and regional foods and specialities that pair naturally with their wines, and the most beautiful places to visit. We have a wonderful journey of discovery ahead of us, and I hope you will join me. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Today I'm delighted to continue a special sub-series that highlights the winners of the prestigious 5-star wines and Wines Without Walls competition that took place in April, just prior to Vinitaly 2024. Over the course of 3 long days, they actually were very long days, more than 2,200 wines were carefully tasted and evaluated by an international jury of wine professionals, sommeliers, Italian and international journalists and wine writers, as well as Italian wine ambassadors and Italian wine experts. Those wines that scored more than 90 points were awarded certificates and have been included in the 5-Star Wines and Wines Without Walls 2025 book, while the very best wines in each category were singled out for special awards. My guest today, Annette Mueller, joins us from Fattoria La Vialla in Tuscany. Buongiorno, Annette. How are you today?
Buongiorno, Marc. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well as well. It's nice to hear you again today. We had a very nice conversation last year when, after Fattoria La Vialla had also won a number of prestigious awards in this competition. So I'm very glad to be talking to you again and to continue the Fattoria La Vialla story. Now, awards won this year for Fattoria La Vialla include the Best Winery in the Wines Without Walls competition, the Best Organic Sparkling Wine for your Oltrepò Pavese Metodo Classico Docg Extra Brut Millesimato Vino Biologico Cuvée numero 2, and the Best Biodynamic Sweet Wine for your Santo del Chianti Docg Occhio di Pernice Riserva Vino Biologico 2015. So big congratulations, Annette, to you and to all at the La Vialla team for this important achievement. I know you have won many awards, but this is a very special competition and an important one. So many congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we are really excited. And also because it's actually the 5th time that we won Best Winery. And it's just always, it's always exciting because it just means the work we are doing is truly, we're on the right track.
Yes, absolutely. And I, as a judge myself, I know, I know how the process is, and the tasting is very rigorous, and of course, completely anonymous. The wines are all tasted blind. We have discussions about each wine, and to make that achievement for 5 times is a very considerable one. Now, Annette, I'd like you to describe, first of all, Fattoria La Vialla. Our listeners are located all around the world, and I'd like you to take us to this special corner of Tuscany where Fattoria La Vialla is located. Tell us a little bit about the landscape and what the farm is like.
Yeah, so Fattoria La Vialla is located about 50-60 kilometers from Florence and about 50 kilometers from Siena. So it's really a part of Tuscany, close to Arezzo, about 10 kilometers from Arezzo, in a little village that's called Castionfibocchi. It's obviously your typical Tuscan landscape, as in, it's hilly, but we also do have a lot of forest. And what makes Fattoria La Vialla so special is that we're not just a biodynamic winery or wine estate, but we're also a working farm. So we also produce other things. And we also have an agriturismo, so people can also come and visit us. We talked about this also last time. I think the fact that we are literally taking biodynamic to the level of looking at the farm as an entire organism and not just concentrating or focusing on one part, such as, wine estate, but that we have all these different crops. We also have animals, we have chickens, we have sheep. A couple of years ago, we also added some cows for landscape restoration. And it makes it special because we have an incredible amount of biodiversity and it really has a different energy. When you come to Fattoria La Vialla, you can really feel a certain aliveness that I think is very unique.
Okay, that is a really good description. And I think it's very important to emphasize this point, Annette, that Fattoria La Vialla is a mixed farm, perhaps farming in a way that used to be done more commonly in Tuscany during the Mezzadria, for example, where any number of crops would be grown alongside grapes, alongside olives. And I'd like to focus a little bit later on some of the wonderful food products you are making. But I think this mixed agriculture rather than specialized monoculture is a very important feature. Now, I'm interested to know something of the history of Fattoria La Vialla, because it began as an organic farm in the early days before organic farming was really widely spread, didn't it?
Yes, it did. So we started in 1978, and it's a family-run farm. And so the founders, Piero and Giuliana Lo Franco, they actually came out of the textile business, but had roots in agriculture because they both had grandmothers that had family farms, one close to Siena and one closer to Arezzo. And so they would spend their summers there, and they just loved, being so close to nature and seeing how things are grown. And they wanted to have that also for their children, the three brothers that are today running La Vialla in the second generation, Gianni, Antonio, and Bandino Lo Franco. And they would have never considered doing anything but organic agriculture. But actually, when we started, there was no entity or body that would certify organic agriculture. It was just a loose connection. And so that was in 1983. That was the first certification. And then in 1994, there was the first official organic certification, because that's when it came into existence. And we have number 125, just to let you know, we really were one of the first. And then at the late 90s, the family started to look into biodynamic agriculture. And that was truly a conscious decision because they realized how much more it had to offer. And so slowly, we converted to biodynamic agriculture, which includes all the aspects. So whether it's in the vineyards, and then also in the winemaking or in the food production. So all the vegetables and fruits are grown biodynamically, but then also processed under the strict rules of the Biodynamic Association Demeter. And it's what we're finding today is that it was, we wouldn't have decided differently, but that it has an incredible added value. Again, as I said in the beginning, because we have really great soil fertility and we have an amazing biodiversity. We are doing right now currently a study with some ornithologists and counted all the different bird species that we have at La Vialla. And we came up with a staggering number of over 140, of which over 80 species are actually having nesting at La Vialla. And that's just incredible,
That is incredible.
Because it means, the reason why we have so many birds is because there are so many insects. The reason why we have so many insects is because we have so many microorganisms in the soil and so many spaces where they can actually propagate. Today, looking at what's happening in the world and all the species that are going extinct, it's really incredible.
Yes, absolutely. And it is incredible to think that the Lo Franco family had that vision for organic farming in the 70s at a time when wine producers and when farmers were still using chemicals for fertilizer, pesticides to kill insects and pests. and herbicides for grass. So that vision to be organic when it wasn't at all fashionable, it wasn't widely done at all, has now really been accepted across the board, I think, in Italy. I'm amazed at how many, in every region I go to, how important organic farming has become and is becoming. But La Vialla have been one of the pioneers. I'd like to turn to the award-winning wines. Just a brief description of the two wines that won awards before we move on to talk about other aspects of the farm. Can we talk about the Oltrepò Pavese Metodo Classico Extra Brut 2016?
Yes, of course. We were lucky enough. So Fattoria La Vialla obviously has its main hub in Tuscany, around Castelfibocchi. There we have around 1,600 hectares, but that also includes a lot of forest. But then we also have a small family foundation whose main aim is to basically identify abandoned lands and to then try and either lease them or buy them and turn into biodynamic agriculture. And so we found a beautiful winery in Oltrepò Pavese where there was a generational shift and the new generation did not want to continue. And so we were lucky to lease the vineyard, not just the vineyard, but also the cellar. And that really helped us to start making Metodo Tradizionali or champagne method with Pinot Nero, since that is one of the regions that's most famous and most pristine for making Metodo Tradizionali. So the Cuvée number 2, and the vintage is 2016. Obviously, it's 100% Pinot Nero. And it was a perfect, let's say, in the vineyard, the selection was already to only select the healthiest bunches and to really make an accurate selection. And then in the cellar, the fermentation happened in 500 liter tonneaus for about 1 year. And then another part of the wine was done in stainless steel at 16 degrees. And then later we added the base wine together with the other wine and passed it into the bottle. And there was a bottle fermentation for over 58 months. At the end, it was 60 months. So we're very happy with the result.
Okay, so very slow secondary fermentation in the bottle.
Yes.
And then I'm interested, as you mentioned, of how the family works, leasing or acquiring abandoned vineyards. And this is something you've done elsewhere throughout Italy, even as far as Sicily. Is that correct?
Exactly. And in Sicily especially, that was also, let's say, an homage to Piero Lo Franco, the founder or part founder of Fattoria La Vialla, together with his wife, because he has his roots in Sicily. So his family originally is from Sicily. And so we have some vineyards there for the Passito and also for the Sanzerato. And we also do have some lemon and some orange groves there to use for our other products.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah. And I think the reason being is, and especially today, I think, while in the beginning, the family was just, because they travel a lot and had this really strong commitment and mission to not let land go abandoned, because they had seen it here in Tuscany and how then when the land is abandoned, how quickly then it changes also the landscape, but also in a way the cultural heritage is getting lost. And so whenever they were traveling and they saw something that really was abandoned, they would inquire. And so we also, for example, have olive groves in Puglia. And we also have some vineyards in the Marche. We also have some vegetable plots closer in Maremma, which is still Tuscany, but closer to the sea. And today it actually is also, this kind of diversification is also helpful, since because of climate change, the weather has become so unpredictable. It also gives us a certain amount of security, in the sense, if there was to be a horrible calamity, in one region, we could still manage to survive by, having something in a different region. For example, last year in Tuscany, especially in the Chianti region, some of our friends, some of the vineyards we are friends with, they had basically practically no grapes, and others had maybe a loss of 80%. And we were lucky, and I think part of that is also because simply our wines, because of the biodynamic agriculture, are more resilient. But we did also have some vineyards where we had maybe only 50% of the yield we're used to.
My goodness. So that is the effect of of climate change. Was that the peronospora, the downy mildew?
It was the Pernice, and the reason being was because first, I mean, we had really heavy rains until June, literally I think in the history of Fattoria La Vialla, which, it's over 45 years. I mean, almost 47, going on to 47 years. We actually couldn't plant the tomatoes. And for the first time, we harvested them. It was almost the end of September, basically together with the wine, because we had such a problem. And so for the vineyards, it really was a problem because first we had this heavy rain, and then later we had these incredible heat waves and drought with temperatures of 40 degrees, and not just one day, but sustained 40-degree Celsius weather. And so it was really a challenging year. So this year, hopefully, it'll be better.
Sure. Yes, I can see her.
Yeah. And I think, but I mean, you're seeing it all over the world that the weather has just gone crazy, and you can't say, oh, it's going to be like this, because you just don't know,
No, absolutely. It's interesting that the biodynamic approach to farming is helping to give more resilience to vines and indeed other crops. So let's just speak about biodynamics just for a minute and briefly, because I know it's a complex subject.
Yeah.
But you can tell us some of the interventions, biodynamic interventions that are carried out that you believe are really effective, both in adding resilience, but also in making wines of such high quality.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, basically, in a nutshell, biodynamic agriculture really focuses on soil fertility and biodiversity. So obviously, you would not have just a monoculture, which is the reason why we have also so many different crops and have animals and chickens, because it really looks at the farm as an organism where each part contributes to keeping nature in balance in a way. And what's still also very different from organic agriculture, where you can have obviously monocultures. In biodynamic agriculture, you don't look just at the crop and try and kind of pamper the crop, but you look at the whole system. So you try to keep the whole system in balance, and that way the crops can take better care of themselves. It's a little bit like a human body. If your immune system is really healthy, then whenever there's some kind of virus going around, you can defend yourself better. And it's the same in nature. When the system is intact, then each plant and each crop can take better care of itself. And so that, I think, is a fundamental difference. There's very little actually aside from that we can do in terms of methods. So obviously we do crop rotations where we can in a vineyard and an olive grove. Obviously that is not possible. We make our own compost. We use biodynamic preparations, which the spray preparations we make ourselves. And that's basically it. So what we can prevent things. But once, for example, we do have a problem or a pest, then there's very little we can do. I mean, there's only then manual labor trying to get rid of it. But what we learned over the decades is that even a pest or a virus like Pernospora in a certain amount actually is part of the ecosystem, and it actually does not harm. It's only when it takes over that it becomes a problem. And so I think what's really interesting in biodynamic or regenerative agriculture is that you really just try to get a feeling for your land, and you try to listen to the land and be part of the land instead of just trying to fix a problem by, spraying something or adding synthetic fertilizer. You really try to maintain a liveliness as a whole. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes good sense. And it makes very good sense in the context of Fattoria La Vialla, because this mixed farm, which you introduced us to at the beginning of this talk, now that entirely makes sense. The animals can help with natural fertilizers, and the biodiversity that comes from so many different plants on the farm all help to create this environment where the soil is good and the products are good, and not just the wines. I know Fattoria La Vialla has a very impressive range of wines, but you have an equally impressive range of food products. And I'd like to actually learn a little bit more about that, because I know that you go from everything from pasta to different sauces and vegetables.
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the name Fattoria, which is farm, but actually in Italian means it's a self-sustaining farm. And so that kind of gave the idea to try and produce as many different products as possible so we could really sustain ourselves. So obviously there's some things we can't produce like sugar, coffee, or salt, But on a whole, it's really interesting. We can sustain a whole pretty sumptuous meal with all the products we make ourselves. And I think the reason being is that in the beginning, as you mentioned, when Fattoria La Vialla started at the end of the 70s, organic agriculture really wasn't much accepted, and then biodynamic agriculture even less. So it gave them also the instinct to say, okay, so nobody wants our things here in Italy. So how can we conserve the things that we are making? Obviously with the wine, you harvest the grapes and you make wine, but then same with the olive oil, which is traditional product in Tuscany in Italy, but then also the vegetables and fruits. And so we started making them into sauces and jams, the grains that we grow. Either we use them we also have a lot of different cookies. We have our own bakery. And then of course the hard wheat we use for making pasta. I think overall, the holistic aspect of it is also that the family pretty soon decided, or together with actually, because La Vialla started more as an agriturismo in the beginning, where people came to stay with us. And as luck would have it, would be foreigners, so Germans, Dutch, British. And they would say, oh, we love this wine. We love this olive oil. We would love to have it, at home. How could we have it at our house? And so the family actually in the beginning would load up this, they'd have a list of people that wanted certain things, and then they would hand deliver them, to Germany, for example. And then later, as things were growing organically and the farm became more and more products were added, they actually decided to keep that part alive and not start working with distributors. And until today, actually, we really do farm to table in the sense that we only sell to the end consumer. So you cannot find Fattoria La Vialla products in any kind of store or shop, but you can only order them online or obviously buy them in Tuscany in our bottega. But other than that, you cannot find them. And I think that is really another really unique and amazing aspect, because this way the value chain remains with the farm and also the control of the quality remains with the farm. When customers have any kind of products, they talk to us. They write us an email and we can react immediately. Whereas if you go through a distributor, aside from the fact that there's added cost and there's a certain dependency, or actually a big dependency. Also, at the end, if your product then ends up in a store and it hasn't been cared for correctly, the distributor isn't going to fix it, but it's your name that actually is being sullied.
Yes.
Because maybe olive oil wasn't stored correctly, was in the sun or in the heat, and now it's turned into not a high quality product, but then it's your name that's involved and not the distributor's name. So I think that is really an important part in terms of agriculture.
I think it's a very important part, Annette. I think that, to produce this quite extensive range of wines and a quite extensive range of food products, you need to have a way to get these to the market. And as you say, if you were producing and selling to wholesalers who then passed it on to others and then exported, it would be a much different affair. But I think from a consumer's point of view, and I say this now because I am a regular customer of La Vialla here in the UK, the products feel like they're coming direct from the farm to my table, the way they're packaged in a very ecological way, the labels, and indeed the information, that the stories that are behind the products makes it very satisfying. And I happily endorse the products that I buy regularly from you. I think that what you're doing is fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you for the compliment.
Listeners around Europe, certainly, and in the UK especially, because you have a hub here,
yes, exactly.
which makes it very, very easy to get the products, especially after the post-Brexit mess that we've had.
Yeah, we had a big problem with Brexit, obviously, but what saved us and we started doing it also, and that's actually because of the whole Amazon movement, because before we only had a warehouse in Italy and then we would fulfill it from there, but then of course that would take at least 10 days and people became more impatient, so we started adding warehouses. We have one in Germany and one in the UK, for example, where we already send our things to the UK, for example, and then also all the taxes are paid and so forth. And then when people order, they order from our warehouse in the UK. And that's what makes it quite easy. sometimes it happens that maybe a product isn't in the warehouse, and then it does take longer. But this way, people actually don't have to pay any kind of taxes or customs.
Yes, it's a huge benefit for those of us in the UK.
And so we try to be really conscious of the way we do agriculture and food processing in a way, but also mindful of our clients, because we literally look at them more as friends than actually like clients where we do a business transaction with. I mean, we really want to transport this philosophy or maybe idea and feeling of La Vialla to a larger audience,
Of course. I would guess, Annette, that the best way to do that, and unfortunately I haven't been able to make it out to visit Fattoria La Vialla yet, but I will come and visit you. But the best way to, for our listeners who, as I say, are located all around the world and who travel to Italy, would be to come and actually see Fattoria La Vialla. You mentioned hospitality at the beginning of our talk. Tell us about hospitality at Fattoria La Vialla.
So we have an agriturismo, which means that we have several farmhouses that we painstakingly restored, but very traditionally, that are spread out over the roughly 1,600 hectares, which is more or less 4,000 acres here at the hub in Tuscany. And so people can stay with us for a week. And then, we offer lunch and dinner, not every day, because we also, in terms of our agriturismo is open to the public only from usually the end of March to mid-October. And then we close to the public. Obviously, we continue working, but we need that time just to focus, on, for example, Christmas in the winter, and then in the spring, just getting everything ready. And so in order to not start having seasonal workers, we try to really look at, so this is how many people we can employ for the whole year. And so this means this is the services we can offer. So for example, we do offer lunch every day, but we only offer 2 dinners during the week and only solely for the house guests, just because that is what we can manage with the staff we have for the full year. And then, for example, when we close, the staff that's in the agriturismo, the workers that deal with the public and with the clients and speak different languages, they come and work in the offices. And for example, the women that cook or clean the houses, they support the olive mill in the bottling of olive oil or the packaging of the gift hampers that we produce. And so everybody kind of has a multifaceted workplace. So, you don't just have one job, but you continue moving around a little bit. But that way we ensure that we don't, hire people in March and then fire them more or less, or have to let them go in October because the work finished.
Okay, so it's about human sustainability as well, and
Yes.
creating a work environment that is good for everybody.
Yeah.
What about the visitors who come and stay in the agriturismo? Can they see how things are being done, the food production or the wine?
Yeah, so we have a lot of day visitors, but also, of course, the people that are staying with us in the houses. We basically have a transparent production area, so you can visit the wine cellar. Obviously, we offer wine tastings there. You can visit the olive mill. You can visit the sauce kitchens and the bakery, and you can really see how and where everything is made, obviously depending on the season. So if you come in, in April, there is no olive oil production, but especially October, September for the wine harvest. We also, for the people that are staying with us, we usually do one day where they can help us in the vineyard and also harvest some wine, or starting mid-October for the olive harvest. And that's really also very interesting usually to people, because a lot of times we've been so removed from what it means to produce a kilo of tomatoes or a liter of olive oil, that it really gives people this idea of how much work it is, to actually harvest the olives, for example. And a lot of times, we usually they always say, oh yeah, we want to work the whole day. With a little bit of experience, we do usually, it's like 2 hours of work and harvesting, and then we do a lunch. And
yes, absolutely. That's probably enough for most people.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's so important to see that extra virgin olive oil really is such a pure product.
Yeah.
When the olives are milled, the oil and the olive water are pressed, and then that first taste of the pure olive oil when it's so young.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a special time.
Yeah, it's my favorite time of the year, I have to say. Because, I mean, obviously also the wine harvest is incredible, but there, I mean, you can taste the must, but which is also very interesting, but it's not as exciting, you know, because the finished product, the actual wine, I mean, it just takes a little longer. And whereas with the olives, it's really immediate. And the first new oil, as it's called, the new oil in Italy, it's just incredible in terms of color, aroma, and just, it's incredible.
Yes, it certainly is. Annette, you've taken me and all our listeners into the world of Fattoria La Vialla this morning. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you again. We had a great conversation last year, but you've really filled in a lot more of the La Vialla story. So thank you so much for being my guest today. And
yeah, thank you for having us again. And I do hope maybe you'll come visit. And then that way you can actually fill out even more of the La Vialla story for yourself.
Yes,
So,
I'd love to. And I hope our listeners will too.
yes, anytime.
Grazie, Annette.
Grazie mille. Buona giornata.
Buona giornata.
Ciao.
Ciao.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Please remember to like, share and subscribe right here or wherever you get your pods. Likewise, you can visit us at ItalianWinePodcast.com. Until next time, chin chin.